All right, Dr. Dupree, whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay, hold on 1 second, please. I'm trying to make sure we can get Rick some support.
No worries.
All righty, let's go ahead and take roll. Start out with the board. Mr. Burdine, I see you here.
Yes.
Addie Helliger.
Here.
Dave Rosenthal.
Here.
Allison Drew. Allison Drew.
Absent, I guess.
Grail James.
I'm here. This is Grail.
Jim Rice.
Present.
Kristen Tossan.
I'm here.
All right, I'm going to go on to staff, then I'll come back to Mrs. Drew. Let's see, Deanna Saavedra,
I am present, thank you.
Joe Rodriguez,
I am present. Thank you.
Beth Martinez,
This is Beth. I'm here.
Brian Glenn,
This is Brian. I'm here.
Gwen Touche,
This is Gwen Touche, and I'm here.
Veronica Sofer,
This is Veronica Sofer, and I'm here.
Long Thom,
This is Long, and I'm here.
Oscar Perez,
This is Oscar, and I'm here.
Anthony Indelicato,
This is Anthony. I am here.
Robert Scamardo,
This is Rob, and I'm here.
and Chief David Ryder.
This is Chief Ryder, and I'm here.
All right, Mr. President, that's everyone. Well, let me go back. Mrs. Drew, are you with us? Allison Drew?
This is Drew. You need to dial *67 on your handset. Dial *67.
No, sir. They're talking over there. My dear stuff.
Here.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Did Rick Morris make it in yet?
No, sir. He's trying.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Burdine, so we have everybody present except for Mr. Morris at this point.
All right. Should we, I assume we'll go ahead and proceed now, and I'm sure he'll get on momentarily. Is that correct?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Pham, are you working with him?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. It is 6:03 p.m. and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum attending on a video conference. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. On March 16th, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meeting laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus COVID-19. In accordance with those suspended rules, Fort Bend ISD certifies the following. Although members of the board are not gathered in central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by video conference. This meeting is being held by video conference because the convening at one location of a quorum of the governmental body is not appropriate during the COVID-19 public health emergency. Based on current guidance from federal, state, and county authorities concerning large gatherings and social distancing during the COVID-19 public health emergency, there is no established location for an audience to observe the meeting. However, the live meeting is audible and accessible through a YouTube link that was timely and appropriately provided to the public and media as part of the meeting posting through a news release and via the district website. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the standard instructions for registering to speak during the public comment portion will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board-adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio and video recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public on the district website. Next is going to be our Pledge of Allegiance. Leading the pledges this evening are two proud Madden Huskies, Michaela and Blake Burdine. Michaela is currently in kindergarten in Mrs. Callard's class, and Blake is in 3rd grade in Mrs. May and Mrs. Goodspeed's class. Blake and Michaela love the outdoors and spending time with family. They are the children of Andrea and Jason Burdine. All right. And back, they can see you both. Y'all stand right here. Go ahead when you're ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's do the Texas pledge now. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you very much, both of you. Maybe we have a silent invocation while we're here. Let's please keep those in mind who are dealing with lots of adversity right now. I know that there's lots of people that are either sick or ill or going through different struggles. So please, let's have a quick moment of silence. All right, thank you. Moving on to the next part of our meeting is going to be audience items. The board encourages and welcomes comments and input from our patrons, but we cannot respond, deliberate, or decide regarding any subject that is not included on the posted agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please refrain from mentioning a student or employee's name when voicing a concern or complaint, as board policy provides alternative procedures through the grievance process policies, GF local or DGBA local, to seek resolution to complaints. The superintendent's office, human resources, and administration in general can assist you in finding the procedures online. The following procedures will apply to tonight's audience items. First, I will read the name of the citizen registered to speak and share that they have 3 minutes to make their comments. We have one speaker this evening, that being Glenda McCall. Once the citizen starts his or her comments, Mr. Rozier, the board's recording secretary, will announce when the speaker has 30 seconds remaining, and once the citizen has concluded his or her comments, Mr. Rozier will mute the citizen's phone line. We're ready whenever you are, Mr. Rozier.
Ms. McCall, please dial *67 on your handset.
Good afternoon, Dr. Dupree, esteemed members of the board and administration. My name is Glenda McCall, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of Fort Bend AFT. As the union president, I wanted to speak to you about equity issues facing our minority students, particularly our English language learners and immigrant families around the district that, like others, are facing particular challenges with online learning.
Unknown participant is now joining.
I am aware that the district has started distributing devices to families that do not have devices. However, the distribution requires an ID that many immigrant families do not have. It is important to understand that we have a population of families that are undocumented and will not have access because of their status. According to Pryor versus Doe, all children are entitled to a free and equitable education regardless of their immigration status. Requiring a state ID is equivalent to denying these students access to equitable education. I've spoken to several teachers around the district, and although this population is not the only one not able to get access to, this population is particularly vulnerable. In some cases, only 10% of the students in classes have been able to access the online learning platforms. Many of these families live in areas where internet access is difficult at best, and providers in their areas are expensive to the point that families cannot afford access to the service. Our teachers are struggling with this lack of equity for our students in that they are not able to support their students in this environment. They have tried calling, texting, emailing when possible. The majority of these families only have limited access to their cell phones that do not support applications necessary to complete many of the assignments including getting access to Schoology. Our teachers are willing to accommodate, but they are being met with roadblocks. They have asked for the ability to provide packets to these students in the interim, but administration is denying that request. They have asked what can they do. They're being told we're working on it. Providing packets is a seemingly easy solution that all teachers were willing to make this accommodation for so that the students can progress at the same level at similar levels to their monolingual counterparts. We are asking that the board and administration allow teachers to make the necessary accommodations, such as packets, to support the English language learners so that their teachers can support their academic process and so the teachers can complete their moral duties of helping to progress these students. We are also asking that the accommodations be made for those families that do not have IDs to access the devices they need without putting themselves and their families in danger, and allow them the dignity of supporting their children just as all other students in the district are being supported. Thank you for your consideration, and I pray that you find a suitable and compassionate resolution for these teachers, students, and their families.
Muted, Jason.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mrs. McCall. We appreciate you being with us this evening. We are going to skip over our closed session this evening and go straight to our action agenda items. 6A1, which is to consider approval of a resolution to postpone the May 2nd, 2020 general election until November 3rd, 2020, due to Governor Abbott's proclamation regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. May I have a motion?
Mr. Burdine, Jim Rice, I move to approve the recommended action.
Mr. Burdine, this is Addie Helliger. I second that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Haliger. Do we have any discussion? Trustees, do we have any discussion?
No discussion here. This is Ms. Helliger.
All right. Moving along to vote, I'm going to do a roll call. And as I state each of your names, please state your name. Give me a few seconds so you will pop up on the screen, and then vote yay or nay. Starting with this evening is Mrs. Drew.
This is Allison Drew. I vote yay.
Mrs. Addie Helliger.
This is Addie Helliger. I vote yay.
Mrs. Grail James.
This is Grail James. I vote yay.
All right. Mr. Jim Rice.
This is Jim Rice. I vote yay.
Mr. Dave Rosenthal.
This is Dave Rosenthal. I vote yay.
And Mrs. Kristen Tossan.
This is Kristen Tossan. I vote yay.
And this is Jason Burdine, and I also vote yay. This motion passes unanimously. Moving along to 6A2. Consider approval of a resolution delegating authority for continued staff compensation and approval of contracts for goods and services necessary to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. May I have a motion?
President Burdine, Jim Rice moves to approve the recommended action.
Kristen Tossan seconds.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have discussion?
Yes, Mr. Burdine.
Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Haliger.
This is Ms. Helliger. I think it'd be important to point out what type of items those are for the public.
Okay. Dr. Dupree, could you say a few words about this?
Absolutely, yes. So the authority we're seeking here, first of all, I'm going to go down to page 2. I guess it's page 2 of the resolution. It's item A has to do with wage payments for non-exempt employees who are not able to perform their jobs. As you know, we're at a place now where the district is virtually 100% back operational, except for the fact students are not in school. So that means, but campus staff are operating, district level staff are working, but there are certain groups of employees that are not able to perform their jobs until the schools actually reopen, such as bus drivers, some cafeteria workers, and other limited categories of employees. We believe it's in the best interest of the district to pay all of these employees, because when we do resume full operations, we will need bus drivers, and we're concerned if we don't pay them, we will have significant, if not 100% attrition of folks going to seek other job opportunities. The other piece, item B, has to do with additional compensation, not to exceed 1.5 times the normal hourly rate for certain non-exempt employees. So as I mentioned, the majority of our staff are working from home, but there are certain employees such as cafeteria workers, custodians, and some that we believe we need to provide incentives to ask them to actually come to the work site to continue vital and essential functions of the organization. So we wanted the opportunity to be able to provide incentive pay for them based on need at the time. The other items have more to do, they're really a ratification of action you took at the emergency meeting on, I think it was early March, right after during spring break actually, Friday of spring break. It's an item that authorizes me to make purchases of items and procure items in response to the COVID-19 virus. Usually that's going to be items such as cleaning supplies and various materials that are required under the circumstances to address needs that are specifically related to the virus and the emergency action. So that's what this resolution covers.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. Do we have any other questions or do we have any other discussion from board members?
Yes, Mr. Burdine, Jim Rice here. My questions really are, for how long will this emergency declaration last? And will, Dr. Dupree, will you and Mr. Gwynn provide an update regarding our financial position and if this is encroaching into our fund balance as we go?
So I will address that. So at this point in time, and this is actually included in the item, just for the benefit of those who are not able to read it, that we're asking for these special dispensations through the end of this academic year, because the school year will end, and at that point we'll be planning toward the following year, and we believe the end of this school year was a natural time to end these things. So that's the ask there. In regard to fund balance, even considering, and we're going to do a full update on this in next Monday's meeting, but even considering additional pay requested in this item, we still expect to end the year in the black with a $2 to $2.5 million surplus for this fiscal year. So it is not eroding fund balance at this point and would not.
Thank you.
Mrs. James, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, this is Grail James. I don't think I heard this, but Dr. Dupree, I apologize if you said it. Could you touch on the procurement of items and how that's going to be changing under this delegation of authority?
Really, I'm going to be honest, I don't anticipate much change in that regard. The vast majority of the items we're procuring, we're going above authorized spending limits is the primary difference. Although I'm sure we could come to a point where there is something we might need to procure. We're going to co-ops when we can, using existing contracts when we can. But typically we will do some type of comparative price shopping to make sure we're getting the best deal on those kinds of things. But I don't anticipate at this point any major departure from the usual procurement method of doing a bid where appropriate or some kind of cooperative procurement. Mrs. James, you did remind me to Mr. Rice, and this may come back to your question as well. Mr. Rice did ask, are we going to be providing an update to the board? And the answer is yes, beginning in May. Any of the contracts that we let or any of these purchases will be reported monthly to the board in the public board meeting, as we did back with Hurricane Harvey.
Okay, so I guess just to add some clarity, thank you, I appreciate that, and thank you for for reporting it to the board. And that'll be helpful. But just to clarify on the vendors, so vendors that we're currently working with or that we have contracts with or whatever, if we're exceeding our, amount of disinfectant or something, then we're going to be just extending that more rather than switching vendors is what I'm getting to.
That would be our goal. Yes, ma'am. Now, there may be an opportunity if, for example, because things are very tight in the market in some cases right now, we have found this in the child nutrition where we have existing vendors. We have had to go to places, maybe a Costco or Sam's or other vendor to get a clamshell to-go box, for example, that we need to be able to. So there is a possibility we may have to find another vendor in some cases.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you very much. Thanks for your clarification.
Yes.
Any other questions or discussion by board members? Please speak now. All right, we will vote next. We will do roll call. Once again, please state your name, wait 2 or 3 seconds, and vote yay or nay. First, Mrs. Allison Drew.
This is Allison Drew. I vote yay.
Mrs. Addie Helliger.
This is Addie Helliger. I vote yay.
Mrs. Grail James.
This is Grail James. I vote yay.
Mr. Jim Rice.
This is Jim Rice. I vote yay.
Mr. Dave Rosenthal.
This is Dave Rosenthal. I vote yay.
And Mrs. Kristen Taussand.
This is Kristen Taussand. I vote yay.
This is Jason Burdine, and I also vote yay. This motion passes. Moving along to 6A3. Consider approval of a resolution to suspend certain grading and reporting policies during the COVID-19 pandemic. May I have a motion?
Mr. Burdine, Jim Rice recommends to approve the recommended action.
May I have a second?
This is Grail James. I second the motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. James. Do we have discussion?
Mr. Burdine,
Yes.
we do have I did want to ask Beth Martinez to, someone needs to mute their phone. I was going to ask Beth Martinez if she could do a presentation, a brief presentation on this item.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. This is Beth Martinez. Good evening, President Burdine, board members, and Dr. Dupree. As we have transitioned to an online learning site, as you know, we've had to rethink how we might be doing grading, and we're coming to you this evening seeking approval of a resolution to suspend grading, grade reporting, and GPA calculations for this spring of 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The proposed resolution includes suspension of specific components of policies EIA, EIE, and EIC, as well as delegation of authority to the superintendent to further suspend policy where needed in a manner that would be consistent with the resolution and needed to facilitate online learning during this spring in a manner that is fair, consistent, and equitable for all students. This was a collaborative effort with the design team members and our legal services department working together to research and recommend the grading process with great care to provide a grading process for online learning that is in the best interest of our students. As a reminder, our design team is a cross-functional team with representation from each department at central office, as well as a principal from elementary, middle, and high school. Additionally, through this process, to come up with this grading process, the information was shared, reviewed, and input was gathered from a group of teachers for feedback. This evening, I'm going to ask Dr. Ashley Causey, who's our Director of STEM in the Teaching and Learning Department, to provide an overview regarding the grading process. And as I turn this presentation over to Dr. Causey, I would like to show great appreciation for her work and for the members of the design team. This is important work and a very important process. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Causey.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Dupree, President Burdine, and members of the board. My name is Ashley Causey, and I'm the Director of STEM. And I've had the honor of serving on the design team with representatives from campus principals and other district departments to make recommendations related to grading. As Beth said, I will provide an overview of the recommended resolution tied to grading and reporting policies. The resolution applies to 3 current board policies: EIA Local, which outlines the academic achievement policy in which regulations detail grading procedures for all levels; EIE Local, which outlines the retention and promotion criteria for each grade level, specifically defining criteria that are used for promotion and retention. And finally, policy EIC Local, which outlines the class ranking procedures for GPA. The proposed resolution related to grading suspends current grading procedures to allow for changes that will be outlined in the presentation that follows. Additionally, it calls for an adjustment to the criteria that will be used for retention. And finally, the resolution allows for an adjustment to GPA calculation for current 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students. This slide details the proposed grading and reporting timelines related to procedures for local policy EIA. The timeline for term 3 has been adjusted to allow for normal operating procedures following spring break. Teachers traditionally allocate time for students who are absent to make up work. So there have been no changes to the process for reporting grades, just an extended timeline. For T4, there's been an adjustment to the number of progress reports and the method by which grades are reported. Related to end of year, there's an adjustment to the calculation of grades on the end of year report card, and T4 will not be included in the final average calculation. Instead, it will be used as an indicator to determine student readiness for promotion and retention. Class rank adjustments are to remove T4 from the GPA calculations due to the defined method of reporting grades. Beginning with term 4, the design team evaluated 3 possible options related how to record grades during the 4th grading period. The first one we considered was numeric grades, and it was determined not to continue with numeric grading due to concerns about inequity and the lack of secure assessment options within the online environment. The second option we explored was using pass and fail for the 2nd semester grade. Through an initial discussion with the NCAA, we determined not to move forward with this consideration, as students who are given a pass on their transcript for the 2nd semester could only earn a C if being evaluated for the NCAA clearinghouse. So after review, the recommendation is to use met standard or did not meet standard to report progress on term 4. This is currently used in the district at standards-based grading pilot campuses, and this method of grade reporting will ensure that Fort Bend ISD reports on the academic performance of students in a way that supports their progress and assists with identifying learning needs over time. In order to ensure alignment across Fort Bend ISD campuses and classrooms, the Teaching and Learning Division has prepared the document that you see on the screen. The Online Learning Content Guide identifies priority TEKS that students should demonstrate proficiency on in order to be successful at future grade levels. Proficiency is defined for teachers, and they will be required to provide students 2 to 3 opportunities to demonstrate proficiency for each focus standard. These tools will promote alignment across classrooms while providing students multiple opportunities to demonstrate proficiency in content which is essential for subsequent courses. For students who are receiving special education services, the classroom teacher will accommodate and/or modify assignments according to the student's individualized education plan. This slide shows the process that Fort Bend will use to calculate final grades for elementary and middle school courses, with the exception of any high school courses taken in middle school. The final grade will be determined by averaging T1, so term 1, term 2, and term 3. Information from term 4 related to met or did not meet standard will be used to identify students who are in need of accelerated instruction. So according to TEA, accelerated instruction is usually provided to students who do not meet grade level requirements. And typically STAR is used to make this determination in grades 5 and 8. So for students who do not meet standard in T4, The information tied to their progress will be essential to ensuring students are either offered a summer accelerated plan or receive support during the 2020-2021 school year. This slide shows the process that Fort Bend will use to calculate semester and final grades for high school credit courses, which is a little different than elementary because high school is awarded credit by semester. Semester 1 grades have been posted to transcripts, and the proposed resolution indicates that T3 will serve as the semester 2 grade, and students will not take a final exam for the spring semester. The final course grade will be determined by averaging T1, T2, so term 1, term 2, and term 3, and information from term 4 related to met and or did not meet standard will also be used to identify those students who are in need of accelerated instruction. And finally, related to policy EIC, this slide shows the projected impact on class rank. The term 3 grade will serve as the semester 2 average for all high school students. And so starting with the class of 2020, currently what we have in policy for class rank is that class rank is calculated after T3. So with the proposed resolution, the GPA for the class of 2020 will continue to be calculated after T3 in accordance with our current practices. Related to the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade cohort students, all students in these cohorts will not receive a term 4 percentage grade, and T3 will serve as their second semester average and as such be included in the planned GPA calculations. Class rank will be posted according to our current policy, absent a term 4 percentage grade, ensuring that all of these cohorts of students retain a level playing field. So at this time, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Causey. We appreciate the presentation. Mrs. James, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, this is Grail James, and I think my favorite comment, which I hope all the secondary students are hearing, is I heard you say no final exams. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well that's something positive. So that's exciting. Okay, so I have a question for you, just kind of about the online learning in general, just to sort of help me to get oriented. About what percentage of our students are participating in the online learning?
I'm going to ask Melissa Hubbard to address that question, as I believe she has that data.
Yes, so we've done some initial data collecting on the student engagement week from week 1, and we are showing approximately 62% of students who have logged into Schoology and have been accounted for by their teacher. And that was as of April the 1st. So go ahead, Ms. James.
Well, I was going to say that sounds awesome. And do we expect to get more students engaged over the period of time, or how do we expect that to trend?
Yes, ma'am. So that was actually data taken before we even started laptop deployment. So we are hoping that with the laptop deployment that we are providing to students, that we will see an increase. We also have been working in partnership with the Department of School Leadership, and they've designed a system and protocol that campuses will be using beginning this week to reach out personally to families to find out what the barriers are to them logging into the system. Maybe it's a device, maybe it's that they don't have the information, and now we can provide them the information. And we'll be analyzing student engagement weekly.
Okay, so that sounds great, and we're expecting more participation. Our hope then, I guess, is to engage all of our students in online learning rather than distribute paper packets to students. What could you explain a little bit around our expectation around that?
So one of the reasons why we wanted to really reinforce the online learning is because that gives our students an opportunity to engage in learning with their teachers. So a lot of our teachers are recording videos, mini lessons. They're posting those real life interactive learning experiences for kids instead of providing paper, which is more of a product that they're producing. They're not really getting the learning that's associated with the paper packet.
Okay, so we're really striving for the online, and I imagine we'll have some statistics around that when it, you know, as time goes on. Now, are we penalizing kids? What if they don't have internet access or they don't have support at home? What happens then?
So what we're working toward with that, as Dr. Kazi just showed you in our grading practices, is we are going to be looking for that participation in T4, and then looking at students' overall performance throughout the year to see if they did meet standard, or if they did they learn the content that they needed to. And then we'll make some accelerated instruction decisions. And do those children need additional support next year to make sure that they've learned the content, or in the summer? So we're looking at various options for kids who cannot engage for some reason or another.
Okay, that's great. And I thought I heard also you say that we're going to be reaching out and making some personal contact with these families to understand what their roadblocks might be, if that might be communication, language barriers, technology. I imagine you might hear all sorts of stories and situations that might be difficult for the children. Is that correct?
Yes, the Department of School Leadership is working with campus principals. They rolled out a process last week to make individualized phone calls to families.
Okay, so that's great, and that kind of brings me to my next question, and that was, can you describe a little bit about, you know, we've heard a lot, of course, the teachers they're out there, they're on the front lines, they're reaching out to their students, instead of having one classroom where all the kids come, they're all of a sudden have to reach out in, you know, 20, 40, or 140 different directions. So it's very challenging for them. So if they need help or they're struggling, do they have a process or a point of contact for that? And then can you explain a little bit about the principal's role, or how that relationship is, how that environment is set up for support?
So in terms of support for teachers, we have kind of various avenues that have been set up. We did provide some online professional learning to teachers, and that they engaged in the week prior to us launching. The Department of Organizational Transformation also has points of contact and office hours where any teacher has the ability to call in and get support. Also, the Department of Teaching and Learning has also instituted office hours as well. We have feedback groups, and I had a teacher reach out to me today saying, I'd love to help train teachers on some of the things I've learned just so far. So we're trying to make contact with teacher leaders who are on those front lines, who want to lead PLC groups for other teachers that are teaching the same thing that they're teaching.
That's awesome. Okay, so thank you very much for explaining that and providing that support. And I think another thing that I've heard Dr. Dupree say a couple of times is not expecting perfection. We're really just trying to keep students engaged, keep them
learning,
moving through the key points of the content, and we're not expecting perfection. So it's really a risk-friendly environment, and take chances and try new things, and everybody will learn something from it. So really appreciate everybody's hard work, and this is really remarkable. In terms, to me, it feels the level of detail that you guys have developed, the thoughtfulness that you've put into developing the program, the student-centered way that you're going about it. It's very, very remarkable. So thank you very much for all your hard work. And I'm excited to see what next week brings. Honestly, it's really great. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mrs. Tossan.
Yes, this is Kristen Tossan. Thank you, Mr. Burdine. So first of all, I want to say again, thanks to you guys and your entire team for brainstorming ways to get through this grading policy and make sure that we have equity for all of our students. It's important to the board, I know. I know it's important to you guys, so we really appreciate you taking the time to sort through all of this. But before I ask my questions, I want to say, kind of piggybacking off of Mrs. James' questions about online learning, I had the extreme pleasure of being able to virtually visit one of our third grade classrooms last week, and it was fantastic. You know, I don't know, I know we've had some challenges with Schoology, and I'm sure that, you know, teachers and students and some families have had challenges, but just to see the teachers and to see these students, and this was before we started curriculum, and they were engaging and learning, and this, it was Julie Bork's class, her third grade class at Settlers Way Elementary, and she did a fantastic job of engaging these students and making sure to check on their health and their well-being and their mental well-being and emotional well-being. And it was such an amazing example of what I know thousands of our teachers are doing this week and were doing last week. And so I just wanted to say again how amazing I think all of you are, and thanks for all the hard work put in. It was really a lot of fun to get to see that and engage in that. And my own students in my own home are engaging in online learning, and I'm seeing a lot of positives. So thanks to all of you guys for that. I wanted to get some clarification. I have a senior in my home, so I'm hearing from questions from seniors about how some of this is going to work from a class rank, grading and class rank perspective. So one of my questions is, I know we normally around this time, I had a senior last year, so around this time, they're posting on the counselor's offices, you know, here's your rank for graduation and here's where you're going to end up. Tell me how this grading policy is going to affect that, and when can seniors expect to see where their class rank is and whether they might fall into summa, magna, cum laude, honor graduates, just whatever.
So as far as what we're proposing with T3 and grading, it's in alignment with what we have done in years past, because every year we calculate senior rank, class rank, and everything after T3. And so T3 will be posted on April the 22nd. So we'll be working with the counselors and our registrar to work out that timeline for when they would be able to have that, but we'll have to have the T3 grades finalized before we're able to calculate that. But it's in alignment with what we've done in the past related to calculating class rank and senior GPA at this time of the year.
Okay, good. So thanks for confirming that. It's what it looked like from the slides you guys were showing us. Also, just to clarify, so I echo Mrs. James, and I'm sure a lot of students are really happy that we're not going to have that final exam. It looks like, you said T3 grades are going to be the second semester grade, and we're going to do a third for a final grade. Where does the first semester exam fit into that calculation, or does it not at all fit into that calculation?
It does not fit into that calculation. High school is a little bit trickier just because of the credits being applied by semester. And so their semester 1 credit is already applied and on their transcript. And then semester 2 will be the T3. When we look at the final year-end average, it serves the purpose for grade averaging, which is what we do every single year. And normally grade averaging is semester 1 and semester 2 averaged together. And if we do it that way, then there's an extremely heavy weight on T3. And so when we looked at the options for how could we ensure that this was going to be in the best interest of the most number of students, we explored looking at doing the T1, T2, and T3. And it was also in alignment with what we were doing at elementary and middle school to kind of help parents be able to understand that as well.
Okay, good. Thank you for explaining that. I mean, I have to agree with it. I think it's a good way to do the calculation. Did we, I guess my question was, you know, we didn't come back after spring break. Do all of our teachers have all of the grades they need for T3? Are we going to have to be accepting some more numerical grades in order to, because here's what I don't want to happen. I know some kids may have been expecting to be able to come back from spring break and bring their grade up. They still had, you know, a week or a few days. I don't even know how much time was left in the semester. I mean, in the term. And I don't want them to be penalized. I guess I wanted to make sure that we're giving them every opportunity. So tell me about that. What is that going to look like?
That is the reason that we did extend the timeline for T3. So T3 was technically completed before we left for spring break, but you're right, there's always those students who were absent or needed to complete a retest and those types of things. And so we wanted to be able to provide that time for students to be able to do that. And so they're able to do that right now, working with their teachers, and those would be the numerical grades that they would put in for T3.
Okay, great. So thanks for providing that extra time for those kids to be able to make some of that up. I think that's all the questions I have right now. Again, I appreciate you guys working on this extra time and making sure that we are equitable for all of our students.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, this is Dave Rosenthal. First, again, I would also like to echo my colleagues here, and it's just amazing in how quickly we've basically retooled our system and have started actually teaching again. And it's just really impressive. I'm just really proud of all you guys, and you guys are just doing great work. So Ms. James and Ms. Tossan basically had most of my questions answered. I just wanted to follow up on what Kristen was saying. So the date that students have to complete all that work that they usually have to do at the end of T3, or the date that they have, you know, to complete the stuff that they would normally get a chance to complete at the end of T3, makeup work, you know, retesting and whatnot. What is that date?
That is the April 22nd date.
Okay, that's okay, because I heard you say April 22nd. Is that the date we'll know basically class rank, right?
Yes, sir. So that's when we'll have the report card finalized and all of those grades posted. And then immediately after that, we can begin work on the class rank.
Okay, so you're going to wait till after the 22nd to actually start to compute. Okay, I got you. Okay, good. And then could you just explain the NCAA issue? I'm just curious about that.
Yes, sir. So when we called the NCAA to talk to them about what we were proposing in our recommendations, what they shared with us is that if we were to look at doing a pass-fail for the entire second semester, because many districts are moving towards that, when they calculate the core GPA for the clearinghouse, if there's a pass or fail on a student transcript for a semester, the highest GPA points that they will give that student is a C. So even if the student had done extremely well, if it says pass or fail on the transcript, they just give them that C.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we're not taking that route, and so thank you for looking into that. And I think what you've come up with is a much better system. And again, just to clarify, so the reason that you're breaking it up and not averaging for high school, you're not averaging the whole year together, is because kids have semester classes, right? They may just have a class that it's just one semester, not the full year. So you'd be kind of mixing apples and oranges there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then again, I know somebody had mentioned some of the issues with Schoology in the beginning. And, obviously it wasn't just us. It was, hundreds of thousands of people banging on those servers. I'm assuming that Schoology got most of that worked out and we're not having too many issues right now.
So, Mr. Rosenthal, we have been working closely with Schoology related to the access issues. And as we worked through the week, last week it seemed to get better. And today I have not heard of any specific issues. So Schoology was working on increasing their bandwidth so that they could support all of the users.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you again, everyone. I'm really impressed with everything that you guys have done, and you really, kind of help make lemonade out of lemons. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Do we have any other questions or any discussion from any other board members?
Mr. Burdine?
Yes, ma'am.
This is Deanna Saavedra, the Deputy Superintendent, and I did want to swing back around and provide some information for Ms. Grail associated with the principal role, because I know that Melissa did a wonderful job of talking about how we're supporting our teachers. In that same vein, we are supporting our principals, just as the teachers had a series of courses to train them in terms of how they engage and deliver instruction through an online platform. We did the same thing with our principals. So we've done a lot of work associated with how do we retool our principals so that they can monitor instruction and begin to engage in kind of observing the virtual classroom. And so they've gone through a series of videos, a 4-part series, where we've talked to them and acclimated them to the expectations for teachers. What does that mean for you in terms of expectations for principals? We've talked to them about how would you convene professional learning communities. We've created monitoring tools for them as well. And as a matter of fact, in the first week, part of their responsibility was to monitor 3 things. The engagement of students, whether their teachers had their engagement activities posted and where to find them. And I believe there was one more item, which I can't recall at this time, but we did provide them with a monitoring tool. And so they are also being supported. The Department of School Leadership has also gone through the training alongside the principals and is also working to develop a tool to support principals so that as we shift to this online platform, we're all learning together, but we have the systems to monitor so that our students are receiving the best education as we can provide them.
Thank you, Dr. Saavedra. Mr. Rosenthal, do you have anything else?
No.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from any other board members? All right. I also wanted to thank Dr. Causey and Mrs. Hubbard again, you and your team. We can't thank you enough for the long hours you've spent and all the hard work that you've done. I'm also amazed and proud of the work that we've done in an extremely short time. So we want you to know that we do thank you. We appreciate you. With that being said, if we don't have any other questions or discussion, we will now vote. I will call on each board member. Please state your name, wait a few seconds, and then vote yay or nay. Starting with Mrs. Drew.
This is Allison Drew. I vote yay.
Mrs. Addie Helliger.
This is Addie Helliger. I vote yay.
Mrs. Grail James.
This is Grail James. I vote yay.
Mr. Jim Rice.
This is Jim Rice. I vote yay.
All right, Mr. Rice. Mr. Rosenthal.
This is Dave Rosenthal. I vote yay.
And Mrs. Kristen Tossan.
This is Kristen Tossan. I vote yay.
And this is Jason Burdine, and I also vote yay. This motion passes. Moving along to 6A4, consider approval of a Texas Education Agency appraisal waiver related to the 2019-20 Texas Teacher Evaluation Support System. May I have a motion?
Mr. President, this is Jim Rice. I move to approve the recommended action.
Second. This is Kristen Tossan.
We have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have discussion? Dr. Dupree, did you have anything that you wanted to say about this, or?
No, sir.
All right. Board members, do we have any questions or discussion?
This is Grail James. I'll ask a question.
Okay.
So my question would be, Dr. Dupree, this, if we don't do appraisals for this, if the teacher hasn't finished their appraisal period, what will happen with their contract for next year, and how is this going to impact their career path?
So the good news is our objective here is to be able to put all teachers on a fair playing field. And as we noted previously, about 60% of the teachers had been observed before spring break, and so they left about 40% that had not been. So we would not have that fair playing field. So in the end, what will happen is that observation will not count for any teacher. And then all teachers will get a summative appraisal, but it will be noted in their file, the special circumstance and the waiver the commissioner's already said he's going to approve all these waivers. We just have to go through the formality. So there will be no effect on the contract. We still will be back at the May, I guess it's whatever the first meeting in May 2nd or whatever May 4th meeting to seek board approval of contracts. We've already, and there will be no impact on their long-term career path. We have already gone through all the non-renewal discussions before spring break. So any teacher who was on the path toward non-renewal has already been addressed and completed in their appraisals. So we're on solid footing there. Anyone remaining was already on a path to receive a contract for next year anyway.
Okay, so that sounds great. And then just maybe as an aside, since we're doing all this online learning and it's really stressful for the teachers right at the moment, are they going to receive any feedback regarding their performance? Not so much in a formal way, but it may be in a more informal way, so they could have some reflection on their personal growth during this time. Do we have any plan for that?
Yes, that comes back to what Deanna was speaking to about the way that Department of School Leadership is coaching the principals. Because just like the teachers are learning a new role, the principals are learning a new role. But since they can't walk down the hall and walk into classrooms, they're going to have to use different strategies. But the goal is to continue all efforts of continuous improvement, even in these circumstances, so that they are getting meaningful feedback to help them continuously grow to always serve their students to the best of their abilities.
All right, thank you very much. That sounds great, and thank you for to the HR team for working this all out. I think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's please vote. I will call each board member's names. Please state your name and give us just a few seconds and then vote yay or nay. Mrs. Allison Drew.
This is Allison Drew, and I vote yay.
Mrs. Addie Helliger.
This is Addie Helliger. I vote yay.
Mrs. Grail James.
This is Grail James, and I vote yay.
Mr. Jim Rice.
This is Jim Rice. I vote yay.
Mr. Dave Rosenthal.
This is Dave Rosenthal. I vote yay.
Mrs. Kristen Tossan.
This is Kristen Tossan. I vote yay.
And this is Jason Burdine, and I also vote yay. This motion passes. Before we adjourn, Dr. Dupree, I would like to make one suggestion. Could we get a frequently asked question page together around some of these policy changes, especially in response to the grading and the reporting policies?
Yes, sir, we can. And that also, I was going to kind of make a closing statement, if you would allow me, that might relate to that as well.
Okay, please do.
Yes, sir. First of all, I wanted to thank the board for making time to do this meeting this evening. I know this was an abrupt request of you, and I appreciate Mr. Burdine in supporting it and the board for making themselves available on short notice. But as you know, each of these items are items of hot question and hot topic in the community right now. The staff wants to know they're going to be paid. And of course, our students want to know how we're going to be grading them and how their long-term career GPA is going to be affected, especially our high school kiddos. So I really appreciate your allowing us to address these in a timely manner. So going forward, tomorrow we're going to issue a broad communication about all the action tonight, and we will be updating the website as well, Mr. Burdine, as you mentioned, to make sure that there's a frequently asked question list about these topics out there. On a related note, though, you've addressed tonight one of the most burning questions we're continually dealing with, and that is how we're going to grade. So this will allow us to get very clear, tight communication around that going forward. The other sentiment that keeps in question, the burning question, has to do with what is going to happen to the rest of this school year, what's going to happen with graduation, those kinds of questions. And so I do want you to know that what I'd like to do, with your permission, Mr. Burdine, is next Monday on the 13th, and we have our regular workshop. I think it would be good for me to present to the board my thinking around what I'm hearing and just the general, my view of where this year is going to go, but also honestly to get the board feedback, because you participate in all of these decisions. They all affect you, graduations, and we do need to come to a decision about whether we're going to try to do a virtual graduation in May, whether we're going to try to do a face-to-face graduation in maybe in May, June, July, or later. And so I would value a conversation, an open session next week where the board could weigh in on these topics. I could provide some information. We could have a good conversation to inform my leadership of staff as we put together recommendations to bring back to the board if necessary, or just to make staff decisions during the next few weeks. Because if some of you have reached out to me directly to provide good insight and your good information, of course, the community keeps asking and asking and asking about whether we're even going to be back in school again this year. And I do have opinions about that, but I think it'd be best to share those publicly in a conversation with the board where you can hear those and interact with them on next Monday night, if you're agreeable to that.
Yes, sir. I think that's a great idea, Dr. Dupree.
Very good. We'll put that on the agenda for a topic next week then. So if you all will be framing your thinking around that, and then especially about the graduation and those kinds of things, I'll be able to tell you what staff is working on and what we're thinking, and then we can get your feedback as we kind of form decisions going forward.
Sounds great. We really do appreciate hearing that. I know there's a lot of consideration and talk, and I know you and your staff are on the phone all day, every day, trying to, for a lack of better terms, run every trap. So we do really appreciate that. With that being said, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I second it.
We have a motion by Mrs. Tossan and a second by Mrs. Helliger. This meeting is now adjourned.